Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle D'Souza Gill, and I will be hosting Dinesh's podcast while he is away filming in Australia with Tucker Carlson. I am sure you are missing him at this point, wondering why I'm still here. But thank you for sticking with us because we have a lot to talk about today, including our southern border and mass deportations. If you don't know me already, I am frequently hosting his podcast. I'm also a mom to my daughter, and I help my husband's congressional campaign. I am the author of 2 books, The Choice, The Abortion Divide in America, and also Why God, an intelligent discussion on the relevance of faith. The best way you can find out more about me is to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, X, all the places. I'm at Danielle D'Souza Gill. That's where you can find my content. So make sure to find me on there. All right, well, we have a lot of content to get to today. We are going to be talking about the importance of sustaining our working class in America and how illegal immigrants are destroying their way of life. We will also speak with political analyst Ryan Girdusky about our southern border, about mass deportations, as well as what we can expect from the CNN presidential debate next week. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Just a few decades ago, Democrats were considered the champion of the working man, the virtuous defender of the weak against the rich and powerful. Today's Democratic Party, however, seems to have traded their work boots for jackboots as they become increasingly authoritarian and willfully tone-deaf to complaints from what used to be their dependable base, working-class voters. So how did this change happen, and what do MAGA Republicans offer that is accelerating the switch? Considering both the demographics of the electorate as well as shifts in party allegiances occurring over the past 50 years, this may shed light on what the path to victory in November could be for us. Patrick Ruffini, a Republican pollster and author of Party of the People, Inside the Multiracial Populist Coalition Remaking the GOP, details this shift in a recent Politico article based on his book. Ruffini points to what he terms a historic realignment of working-class voters who, in 2016, helped Trump win the presidency. Trump's victory surprised pollsters from Bob Beckel to Karl Rove to Rachel Maddow, all of whom claimed and really seemed to believe that Trump had no chance of winning in 2016. Ruffini himself states that he, like all the other pollsters in the 2016 election, had egg on his face after the results came in. When asked about that comment in an interview with Nick Gillespie for Reason, Ruffini explains, quote, "Everything that was really conventional wisdom among political observers in 2016 pointed to a Trump victory being flat out unthinkable. Well, the unthinkable happened, and 4 years of prosperity ensued. However, the question remains, can Trump do it again? The differences in numbers between the winning and losing candidates in both the 2016 and the 2020 presidential elections were very close. In 2016, just 80,000 votes spread across 3 states tilted the victory in Trump's favor. In 2020, the margin of victory was even closer, with only 44,000 votes across 3 states passing the presidency to Biden. Such a close race means winning might come down to which party can rally the most effective coalition of voters. With that in mind, it becomes imperative that we understand why the pollsters were so very wrong in 2016 and what lessons we learned that could help Trump build an even stronger coalition of working-class voters in 2024. As for the first question, Ruffini points to decades of shifting priorities among voters, going back to President Nixon's winning the White House in 1968. 50 years ago, Ruffini states, Richard Nixon saw success in aligning blue-collar workers against the counterculture left. As expected, the left was confused by the conservative voters' unwillingness to support Democrats who promised programs meant to benefit workers. A 1972 article from the New York Times titled, quote, "A Blue-Collar Voter Discusses His Switch to Nixon," presents the viewpoint of John He Hazuda Sr., a 42-year-old Boilermaker from Pennsylvania who had always voted for the Democratic candidate, but who had, for the first time, decided to abandon the Democrats and vote instead for President Nixon. The Times piece goes to great lengths to make the steelworker seem naive and foolish and wrong in his decision. But in his responses to the writer's pointed questions, Mr. Hazuda's respect for self-reliance and hard work loomed large. It is one of the mainstays of conservative Americans, this desire to be free while working hard as we make our way in the world without having to kowtow to the government or be controlled by liberals. As the decades roll by and the Republicans bring more and more working-class voters into the fold, Democrats become increasingly confused as to why voters are not acting in what the left believes to be their so-called best interests by voting for the party that will take care of them. Democrats seem most flummoxed by their recent loss, not just of working-class voters, but of minority voters in particular. Ruffini explains that according to numerous polls, Black and Hispanic voters are just not motivated by the racial identity rhetoric that is coming from the left. Americans of all races and ethnicities revere the traditional values of self-reliance and hard work, so offering a welfare state on steroids necessarily falls flat. Leaning hard into this crucial difference between Democrats, who see voters as victims in need of a savior, and Republicans, who see voters as capable of saving themselves, is one way to gain even more support among working-class voters, who don't want to be dependent on the government. Trump's hopeful and patriotic message certainly resonated with blue-collar voters in 2016. But was it just a fluke? Ruffini asserts Trump's 2016 coalition of working-class voters of every race was evidence of a trend, not a happy accident. Furthermore, that coalition seems to be growing in 2024. Trump, according to Ruffini, has an advantage over Joe Biden, who has been steadily losing the support of working-class voters of color. Wow. Citing numerous polls, Ruffini shows Trump reaching nearly 20% of the Black vote and swiftly closing the gap of the Hispanic vote as well. A quick look at how Trump and Biden spent their weekend points to why exactly Trump is succeeding where the Democrats are failing. On Saturday afternoon, Trump attended a roundtable discussion at a church in Detroit. The event was put on by Turning Point Action as part of their People's Convention, a 3-day event helping to galvanize conservatives in the Detroit area. During the discussion, Trump detailed his Platinum Plan, which includes approximately $500 billion in federal contracting opportunities intended to reinvigorate Black businesses and churches. Lorenzo Sewell, a pastor at the Detroit campus of 180 Church, was part of the discussion. He told Fox and Friends that Trump's focus on solutions is important because, in Sewell's words, those metrics matter to us, so we're going to hold him accountable to the Platinum Plan that he produced. When Biden visited Detroit in May to be the keynote speaker at an NAACP event, his speech focused on how divisive Donald Trump is. Biden made the classic "orange mad bad, so vote for me" argument, rather than offering any constructive ideas of his own to the community. This past Saturday, Biden was at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, along with Barack Obama, Jimmy Kimmel, George Clooney, and Julia Roberts. Although reports vary, video from the event seems to show Biden freezing up with a vacant smile on his face. Obama appears to escort him from the stage. A confused and ailing Biden, surrounded by Hollywood sycophants and being led around by Obama, presents a stark contrast to Trump in a Detroit church, candidly discussing issues that are important to conservative voters in the Black community. Democrats have lost their identity as the party of blue-collar workers because the economic struggle of the working class against the wealthy is no longer key to their platform. Moreover, Democrats oppose conservative views on a variety of matters, such as the sanctity of human life and parents' rights. Ruffini states that the old economic struggle of the many against the few has figured less prominently in the Democratic Party's Trump-era messaging, as it has surged in wealthy former Republican strongholds repulsed by the 45th president. One area where Democrats have been gaining ground, then, is among college-educated white voters, but at the cost of their working-class base. It seems the Democratic strategy of wooing voters by demonizing conservatives as deplorables is yielding less than spectacular results. According to Ruffini, aligning the GOP with blue-collar workers from Nixon in '68 to Trump in '24 has led to the public perception that Republicans are the party of the common man. In more recent research, the Brookings Institute is bending over backwards to serve the tired Democrat meme that they're still the party of the people by referring to these blue-collar voters as white evangelicals without college degrees, as if people want to be called this. But it's also clear from their research that people without college degrees are coalescing around the Republican Party. This is noted by Ruffini, who says the GOP is shedding rich white voters while the left gains in that same category. Of course, they're the elites. With voters who are not college graduates outnumbering their college-educated counterparts by a 60 to 40 point margin, that's not exactly a winning coalition for the Democrats. What's worse, as the party of entrenched impersonal power, Democrats now have no regular Joe street cred to use as a smokescreen. Fight the power? You are the power, Democrats. This is bad news for Dems because if middle-class voters focus on results over unpopular leftist values like unfettered abortion on demand and the political indoctrination of school children, Trump delivers the goods. A White House press release from 2020 summarizes the economic prosperity enjoyed during Trump's presidency. Before the coronavirus, America gained 7 million new jobs, more than 3 times government experts' projections. Middle-class family income increased nearly $6,000, more than 5 times the gains during the entire Obama administration. The unemployment rate reached 3.5%, the lowest in a half-century. During Trump's presidency, the country achieved 40 months in a row with more job openings than job hirings. More Americans reported being employed than ever before, nearly 160 million. Jobless claims hit a nearly 50-year low. The number of people claiming unemployment insurance as a share of the population hit its lowest level on record. Incomes rose in every single metro area in the United States for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Emphasizing self-reliance, hard work, and economic prosperity will help Republicans expand the growing coalition of blue-collar workers. However, there is another trend unaddressed in this analysis. The increasing unpopularity of university is one of the reasons behind the growth in the number of voters without college degrees. The fact is, higher education is increasingly viewed as worthless political conditioning for leftism. Because it is. It is a place where you're indoctrinated. And what is the Democratic platform under Biden? Arresting more MAGA extremists in order to keep the little man down. You know, Democrat cultural values. So that's the political landscape for 2024. It's one where the soul of the country will be decided, as Biden says, as voters choose either the jackboots who want to keep us underfoot or the work boots we proudly wear on our own 2 feet.
You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, and so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. Now, when Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company, just the pillow, but with the help of his dedicated employees, Mike now has hundreds of products, some of which you may not even know about. So to get the word out, I want to invite my viewers and listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. 6-pack towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, $25. And for the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. By the way, orders over $75 get free shipping as well. The amazing offer won't last long, so act now. Call 800-876-0227. The number again, 800-876-0227, or go to mypillow.com. Make sure to use the promo code. It's DINESH, Dinesh. We recently had some monumental news, not good news, but no one's talking about it. For the first time in our history, the interest we pay on the national debt surpassed every individual budget item except Social Security. That's right. The U.S. now spends more on interest than on national defense or even Medicare. And it's only getting worse as big government continues to spend like drunken sailors. This is why savvy investors, central banks, concerned savers are turning to gold, something that is not tied to the inflated U.S. dollar. You can too with the help of Birch Gold. For over 20 years, Birch Gold Group has helped thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. To learn more, text Dinesh to 989898. Claim your free information kit on gold. No obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned my trust with their education-first approach, their thousands of happy customers, and their countless 5-star reviews, which is why I buy my gold from Birch Gold. Protect your savings. Text Dinesh to 989898 today. I want to share with you an upcoming film that has core values like bravery, courage, individuality, hope, and a firm faith that the best is yet to come. It's called Horizon: An American Saga. Dive into the heart of the nation with Horizon: An American Saga, where faith, family, and freedom intertwine to ignite the patriotic flame. The film delves into the courage, resilience, and unyielding determination of America's pioneer spirit. Horizon: An American Saga highlights timeless values and cherished principles, serving as an inspiration and stirring tribute to the quintessential American ethos. Horizon is the story of how America became the country we love. It's the story of courageous men and women who sacrificed everything for their chance at the American dream. Hollywood legend Kevin Costner stars in and directs the epic tale of how the West was won. This 4th of July, make Horizon part of your celebration of this great nation. Don't miss Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1 in theaters June 28th and Chapter 2 in theaters August 16th.
I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Ryan Girdusky, always one of my favorite guests. He is an author. He also has a Substack called the National Populist Newsletter, so make sure to subscribe to him on there. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Danielle.
Of course, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about next week with the presidential debate coming up on CNN. Do we have any more information or polling, or how do we think things are going? Because I know the left, they've been arguing that Biden has been trending upward. They're saying Biden is doing better now, and Trump, maybe he had his surge and it's going down. And it seems like this is, I don't want to say that that's true, but it seems like sometimes this happens where before an election, Republicans, like maybe we peak too soon or something. It's like everybody thinks we're going to win or everybody thinks it's going to go great. I think that the midterms burned me in that sense. And then it's like all of a sudden on election day, they figure out something. So where do you think that things are going now?
So if you look at the Fox poll that was just released, which for the first time since March has Biden leading Trump by a point, Trump's numbers aren't going down. They're essentially been stagnant at around 49%, between 50 and 48. So let's say 49%. Biden's numbers have been going up. What I suspect a lot of it is like anti-Israel, pro-Gaza Democrats who frowned on Biden, but we're probably always going to come home to him. And that's where the numbers are, because Biden's numbers haven't picked up a ton. They picked up about 3 points overall, or 4 points. In the state polling, though, if you look at where state polling is, which is honestly more important than national polling, Trump is still ahead in every Sunbelt state. He has still not been down in a single serious poll. I think there was one like online poll, but a single serious poll since I want to say September 2023. So he's been ahead in every single poll in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Nevada. And then when you go into the big three Midwestern states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and Marist poll, which is not a Republican-friendly pollster at all, had Trump up by 2 in Pennsylvania, which is the critical, what they call the tipping point state. So if he wins Pennsylvania, irregardless how every other state is going to go, he'll win the election. If he has if Maris is correct and other polls like it are correct, then it's there. I mean, what we're really talking about with General Surge is can Trump win the popular vote, which is not as important, but we're having that conversation. It's really because the Electoral College has been almost spoken for. If you look at election analysis organization, The Economist, 538, and JHK Forecasting all have Trump with I think 538 maybe 50-50, but JHK Forecasting and The Economist both give Trump about a 60% chance of winning. So the wind is definitely at his back more now than it ever has been in any previous election.
Wow. Okay. That's great. I think that's how people are feeling, but I think people just worry because we don't know what's going on with illegal immigrants, all of these other crazy things. So how can we kind of shelter ourselves from having illegals being given some kind of IDs or being able to vote? I think that's a concern for a lot of people because there's just so many illegals coming into the country and they're being shipped all over the country, being flown all over. So are they going to swing states? How is that going to impact the election?
Well, so in most states, voter registration is a little difficult. Like in Texas, for example, you have to show proof of ID, proof of citizenship. In a number of important swing states, you have to show proof of citizenship. The states that I am more worried about, states like Wisconsin, which have day of voter registration, their illegal alien population is not as substantially larger as other places, like maybe Florida or Georgia. But we also haven't seen a substantial uptick in voter registration in any of those places either that we would see with illegal aliens. It could definitely be a concern for sure. I think the more serious concern, though, that I think that people really need to be on the lookout for is Republicans just not voting. Republican voters tend to be the lower propensity voters who just don't show up every election, either because they're busy or they're working 3 jobs or they're retired and it's hard for them to get out. Those are the ones I'm more concerned with, is lower propensity Republicans, because what all the polls are showing right now and what all the data is showing right now is a high turnout election is very good for Trump, because those who don't vote, those vote infrequently, are more likely to be Trump supporters. I want to go back to the debate, though, because you asked me a question about that a little while ago. Mm-hmm. So the CNN debate is next week on the 27th. What we know and what has been reported is that Trump is doing policy debates. And really what I think is important for the Trump campaign and what for the president himself is there's going to be a lot of questions around January 6th, around the 34 convictions, around his personal issues, around the election of 2020. They might even bring up Charlottesville. Who knows? I mean, it's Jake Tapper. You never know. And there'll be a lot of questions. Well, he will be on the defensive, and it's how to pivot to a conversation over policy. Because if this election is about the state of the country now and Joe Biden's leadership, then Donald Trump is going to win it overwhelmingly. If it becomes a question of, do you personally like Donald Trump? Well, then there's a lot of independents who don't. There's a lot of college-educated women who don't. And they don't personally like him, even if they like his policies. And I think that's really important for him to constantly get back to the issues at hand for the average American. And that will be an important part of this. I think having the June debate is the last chance Joe Biden has to make a good impression on the public before they go completely off into the summertime. And come Labor Day, if they haven't changed their mind, despite hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign ads and 34 conviction felonies and every other thing under the sun, then we are going to be walking into a fall that looks like the spring, where Donald Trump is in the lead everywhere and Joe Biden he'll have money, but he's going to have to start cutting his circle of states he focuses on lower and lower and lower to just a handful in order to sit there and try to win re-election.
Interesting. Do you feel like, though, with the convictions, with all these things they're doing against President Trump, that has been that has been benefiting Trump because he's raised more money, like more new people have been brought into his fold. It's kind of, I think, helped him a little bit. So, do you feel like, though, if the Democrats bring that up, the CNN people bring that up, it could backfire on them because it reminds Americans, like, wow, he's being targeted? Because I also feel like that is a wake-up call for people. So I agree. I think the policy definitely is on Trump's side. Obviously, America is in a far worse place now than it was, where we can't continue down this rabbit hole. But the personal side, I think, has been helping Trump somewhat. I mean, this personal side of Biden, I think, is that he's mentally declined, and his personal side is bad. I don't even know if people care that much about the Hunter Biden stuff, honestly, because they kind of gave him very lenient charges. But how do you think it plays out with people as far as just viewing Trump personally? Do you think that the left's attacks on him are painting him in a way that hurts him that much?
I mean, it's this really strange thing that Americans have said in polls and data, is that they think that he's guilty and they think that it's a political hit job. And it hasn't done anything to affect the polls. Nancy Pelosi's old speechwriter was on a podcast called Somebody's Gotta Win. And they were asking about the convictions. And they said, when Bill Clinton was convicted of 2 crimes he committed while president, actual crimes, not some BS crime, the Democratic Party rallied around him in his defense. They didn't sit there and say, it's over. You should step down. These charges and what the felony convictions were, although I completely disagree they should have ever been brought up as anything, but they were from 18 years ago. And most people don't really know what the conviction was. Essentially, people assume that he was paying for sex. That's what the assumption is, even though that's not the charge. And most Americans don't care about that. That kind of really just washes over them. So I don't think it's having an impact whatsoever. I think the idea of it being a political hit job is more having a bigger impact than the actual conviction and charges. I spoke to 2 or 3 of my friends who were big Nikki Haley supporters, very, very anti-Trump. And they privately said to me after the charges, 2 of the 3 had donated to Trump after the charges and after the conviction. And one of them said, I'll probably vote for him now because this is really just a disgrace. He was a lawyer too. So anecdotally, I've seen a lot of Republicans who are kind of on the fence or really get pushed over. I think that there's a lot of people who sit there and say, if this could happen to him, it could happen to me. And I need to show them that I'm not going to be intimidated by the system or whatever the case is. So but it's not, when it comes to the debate, it's not a matter of what Jake Tapper asks. It's a matter of how Donald Trump responds. If he starts screaming and yelling and yada, 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 and it looks bad upon him and he looks defensive, then that is not great. If he sits there and has a witty remark and then says, Jake, you talk about this every single day for the last year and a half. None of these alleged charges, none of these convictions, none of this political bullying is going to help the life of a single American struggling to pay bills, struggling to get not insurance, but to get a mortgage. None of them are working to fight interest rates, or to work with interest rates rather. None of this stops illegal immigration. Nothing stops the war in Ukraine. If he sits there and says all of this personal stuff is a distraction from the needs of the American people, that's a huge winner. That's a huge television winner, because it paints the media, which Americans hate the media, it paints the media as being on a political partisan hack as well. And then he can go on the offensive on policy issues against Joe Biden, which is where he wants to be. He wants to talk about the state of the country. There was a poll done by Quinnipiac, I believe it was released yesterday, and it said Americans feel worse about the economy today than they did at the height of the pandemic when the government was shutting down businesses. That says all you need to know, and he needs to be constantly bringing it back to the state of the country. and make this election not a question of two people who are disliked by a majority of Americans, being Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but a question of how did they feel and who do they think can take them to more economic prosperity, to peace, to a secure border, to yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. What do you think are the chances that they do get to discuss the issues and it doesn't just become personal attacks? Because it seems like the CNN people, they're going to want to make it all about personal attacks.
Yeah.
And I think Trump is going to hit back. I think he's going to do a great job, but I think he's probably going to respond. And then Biden is, I don't even know. I guess his messaging is that his economy is great. Bidenomics is great. His presidency is awesome. I don't know. I don't know how that resonates, but it seems like him or mostly Jill, I guess, if she's like doing an interview or saying something, she'll say how great it is that Joe Biden's full of wisdom and all this stuff. So they, I guess, don't feel affected by the fact that most Americans think he has dementia, think his mind is lost. She's saying he's this wise sage. So I guess, how do you think the messaging is going to play out between the two, and how do they focus more on the issues?
Well, Joe Biden is going to sit there and cherry pick numbers. I mean, you could cherry pick numbers all you want. You could sit there and say there's a 4% unemployment rate, which technically there is. Now, most jobs have gone to non-citizens, which is what Donald Trump should respond with. He could sit there and cherry pick answers here and there, wherever he wants to sit there and give the best number. The mistake conservatives and the mistake Republicans are making is by overstating Joe Biden's mental decline. Everyone can see it. But when you say, not you, but when people say, he's got such bad dementia, he can't stand, he can't do this, he can't do that. And it's like the State of the Union address, and he's able to hold an hour or an hour and a half or however, and hold himself, whether he's shot up with Ritalin or not. The expectations are so low that he could easily exceed them. If you go back to the 2008 vice presidential debate, expectations for Sarah Palin were rock bottom. They thought she was going to faint or throw up or, be unable to pull off two sentences. And she did a fairly decent job against then vice presidential candidate Joe Biden. And she was considered the overall winner of the debate. She didn't have a stellar debate performance, but it was good considering expectations were so low. By setting expectations for Biden so low, as long as he can hold it together for an hour or an hour and a half, he's going to be considered, oh, look, it's fine. All the conversation is completely overstated. Now, if Joe Biden has a moment like John Fetterman did in the Pennsylvania debate, where he can't answer a question, I remember from Fetterman after that causes a lot more pause. And a lot of people sit there and say, do I want to do this? Do I want to support him? He's really, really, really not doing well. Not all people, but there will be some independents who will sit there and say, this is giving me great concern. So that's really where that's at. Chances that they're going to talk about policy, 20% after 30 minutes when everyone's watching and bashing Trump. 30 minutes in, we'll get a question on Israel. Be like, okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, Ryan. So you said things are looking good in the Sun Belt. Things are looking good with places like Georgia, hopefully Arizona. But you also mentioned Pennsylvania as being a very important state we have to win kind of to tip over the election. So what's happening there and how can we win in Pennsylvania?
So Pennsylvania is an interesting state. It is it's medium-sized to large population state. And what it is there's the cities of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, which are heavily blue. Philadelphia's population has been declining over time, and it's actually been demographics that have become more favorable towards President Trump, like Asians and Hispanics have moved in, and demographics that are less favorable, especially Black voters, have moved out. So you'll actually see probably President Trump pick up some level of support, that a decent support in Philadelphia city, and his numbers probably go up within the city of Philadelphia. As it did, by the way, from 2016 to 2020, Trump's numbers in the city of Philadelphia improved. So both those things are working. Pittsburgh will probably stay Pittsburgh, probably won't change much at all. The thing that Democrats are excelling at is the collar counties around Philadelphia. So I'm talking around Delaware County, Montgomery County, Bucks County, all those counties. Some they range from either deep blue to light blue county, Bucks County being the biggest swing county in the state of Pennsylvania and among the collar counties. If Trump can break through Bucks and win Bucks, he's going to win the entire state. The other problematic thing that Trump suffers from is that big counties that are either purple or pink or red, like Lancaster County or Erie County, Pennsylvania, they trended to the left in 2020. Those are suburban or rural, heavily Amish, in the case of Lancaster County, population centers that he needs to pull big numbers out of to sit there and offset anything coming out of the collar counties. So rural turnout is very, very important. Mid to large size counties, Lancaster, York, Erie, really matter. Beaver County over in Western PA, those county sizes and turnout really matter. And then it's just a handful of swing counties like Bucks County, or Northampton County. If Trump can sit there and break through places like Northampton, former Rust Belt centric parts of the state that really lost a lot of jobs to China, then he can do fairly well. That's really where he has to sit there and show substantial growth. It's the northeastern part of the state. It's around Bucks County, and he's got to return to 2016 level era numbers out of Lancaster, out of Erie, out of Beaver County, and he can win the state.
Okay, good to know. And my other question is, our southern border being what it is, this is, I think, one of the number one issues for Americans. Why is that not kind of a slam dunk issue for us? It seems like it's very clear Trump's border policies were much better. Joe Biden's border policies have led to all of these illegals coming through the country, affecting a lot of working class Americans all over. So is this an issue that should be talked about as like one of our number one issues? Is that going to be kind of a winning topic for us? Or do you think a lot of Americans just don't realize how bad it is? They don't feel it yet, but pretty soon they will? Or where do you think our messaging should be on that?
You know, part of the fabric of American society is this idea on fairness, right? Like if you say something is unfair, you're automatically somewhat on the winning side in the ideas of the public. The concept of fairness in terms to both legal immigrants and low-wage income or middle-income Americans, when it comes to what illegal immigrants get versus what you get, drives them crazy. So if I was on the Trump campaign, my ads would be to people in both swing House districts, which, by the way, if Trump wins the presidency, he really needs the House to keep the House, because if he doesn't keep the House, he'll be impeached on day one. So like in the Long Island seats or in the Westchester seats with Mike Lawler, I would sit there and talk about the fact that illegal aliens in New York get free shelter, free healthcare, free this, free that. Even in Pennsylvania, I would talk about Philadelphia. I would go into how much every taxpayer is spending on behalf of illegal immigrants because of Joe Biden's agenda. The cities of Denver, New York, Boston, the whole state of Massachusetts actually have begun cutting funding on services like small town firemen. In the case of Massachusetts, sanitation hours have been cut in New York. In Denver, they're talking about doing massive cuts. Every major city in this country is cutting services to taxpayers that they pay for essential things to keep quality of life high, in exchange to house and feed and clothe and imprison and give healthcare to illegal immigrants who don't pay any of the system. I would really drive that home, and I would drive home to legal immigrants. You did the right thing. You waited in line. You spent years and years and lots of money to become an American citizen. How dare they get away with this? How dare they? And now you likely contribute as a taxpayer. How dare they get all this stuff for free? I would drive that as the message behind Joe Biden's policies are not fair to you because you work and you pay into the system and you did everything right if you're a legal immigrant, and Joe Biden is giving away the farm for free, because it brings the border, which is in many parts of the country, thousands and thousands of miles away, really home. It really hits them home. And then I would also bring up the fact of a lot of, Venezuelan gangs have come in through the border and are now operating within the United States to both traffic drugs and target police and other stuff.
Right. Who should Trump pick as his VP? Who will help him win Pennsylvania the most? Is that the question that we should be asking? Should we be focusing on how to win a few of these swing states? It seems like A VP traditionally would carry a state with them, and that was kind of what they brought to the table. I also saw some polling recently, although again, skeptical of different polls, is that choosing a Black vice president doesn't necessarily bring in more Black voters. And so maybe they're kind of drawn more to Trump in a way than they are to maybe some other like Republican who happens to be Black. I don't know. So what should be considered in terms of asking someone to be VP? Should it be someone who carries forward, Trump's mantle of America first? I think that would be great. But also, I think maybe with Trump's personality, he may prefer to choose someone who's like has a demeanor that's a bit more like calm or something. And so maybe that person won't be president after Trump. I don't know.
So the concept that a Black VP would bring in Black voters is completely false. It's never really worked as far as interest groups go. When it came to any candidate running for office, you could look at Virginia. For example, Glenn Youngkin did not get more Black votes because the lieutenant governor was Black. And this has been tried many, many times, and it's never actually worked. What you really want and what Trump, I believe, really wants from a vice presidential candidate are three essential things, which is one, who can beat Kamala in a debate? Because that's really where the vice presidential candidate is going to be introduced to the country. Most people don't know who many of the leading contenders for vice president are. Secondly, who could raise a lot of money? That will be an important part of the entire thing. And then third, who will be loyal to President Trump? Because let's say he wins and he has 4 years in office. I believe, and I think that many people believe, Democrats are going to try to put him in prison for the rest of his natural life, irregardless. If there's a vice president who follows him, they have to be willing to defend him post-presidency. If that means a pardon for an alleged crime that they're going to sit there and say that he committed, or some accusation, they need to be sitting there and saying and understanding that this man is going to be a target, like Richard Nixon was a target, by the way, for the rest of his entire life. Only it's probably worse now than it was even for Nixon. I don't think a vice president brings in voters. I don't think that there's electoral game change from a vice president. And I don't think there has been for quite some time. I don't think that more women voted for Joe Biden because Kamala Harris was on the ticket. I think he would have gotten the same number of votes, irregardless of had he picked, Tim Kaine or whatever, or whoever. Likewise, I don't think that more white men voted for Barack Obama because Joe Biden was on a ticket. What is essential right now is who can speak to certain voters in a way and energize them and bring the base. I think this is a base election. So given what I said, I do believe that J.D. Vance is the best candidate for vice president. He has the potential to raise a lot of money from Silicon Valley, where he's worked, I think, and Democrats have admitted this, that he would clean Kamala's clock in a debate. He's young and he's energetic, which, by the way, don't forget, age is also a big diversity factor. Everyone in this election is old. I mean, Kamala's relatively middle-aged, but JD is under 40 years old. It's a very, very big diversity qualifier. And lastly, I think JD complements President Trump's vision on everything from having a patriotic tariff policy and American industrial policy, to immigration, to foreign policy, and not needing to sit there and be the world's policeman. And I think that anyone else who has been discussed as a serious potential candidate really would be in an adversarial position, because they actually don't agree with Donald Trump on many, many policy positions, like J.D. Vance does.
Okay, perfect. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate your analysis.
Absolutely.
And make sure to subscribe to his Substack, National Populist Newsletter. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
The hardest part about weight loss? Getting started. But once you get started, you'll be so happy you did. Are you ready to lose weight but not sure where to start? I understand. Debbie and I were right where you are a year and a half ago. Let me tell you why we chose PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition and why I so highly recommend their program. First, Dr. Ashley Lucas has her PhD in chronic disease and sports nutrition. Her program is based on years of research. It's science-based. Second, the PhD program starts with nutrition, but it's so much more. They know that 90% of permanent change comes from the mind, and they work on eliminating the reason you gained this weight in the first place. There are no shortcuts, no pills, no injections, just solid science-based nutrition and behavior change. And finally, probably most important, it works. I lost 27 pounds, Debbie lost 25. We haven't gained the weight back. The best thing about this program, they have an 85% success rate of their clients maintaining their weight loss for life. They provide elevated maintenance support for you through the PhD alumni community, which will give you the support you need to keep this weight loss off forever. So if you're ready to lose weight for the last time, call 864-644-1900 to get started. You can also go online at myphdweightloss.com. Do what we did, do what hundreds of my listeners and viewers have done. Call today. It's 864-644-1900. Have you heard about the groundbreaking film hitting theaters nationwide this summer? Get ready for The Relentless Patriot. It's a captivating documentary by Global Ascension Studios, Hollywood's first ever conservative movie studio, headed by Joshua Macchiello. This isn't your average documentary. It's a powerful tribute to American patriotism and activism, following Scott Lobido's remarkable journey from stirring flag renditions to outspoken advocacy for our service members. Scott's story is one of unwavering dedication and unfiltered passion. Join the movement for the special release of The Relentless Patriot. Experience Scott's journey, feel the pulse of American patriotism. Don't miss this unforgettable cinematic experience. Be part of history with The Relentless Patriot, brought to you by Global Ascension Studios.
Well, that wraps up today's show. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to find me on social media. I'm at Danielle D'Souza Gill on all the platforms. Find me on True Social, X, Facebook, Instagram. I'll see you next week. And remember, MAGA.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.